Hey Dad, I spent too many hours today working on beeswax embedding, just for fun. So I started off by taking two of these 12-volt, 2.5 amp AC/DC adapters with the switches, and I wired them up to the same block with copper sheet contacts folded over, and then they've got wires inside, and then they're soldered on the inside, and then folded over and hammered down on each side, and the switches there. And I took the enclosures off the switches so that I could solder on longer leads. But anyway, it's got a little bit longer leads on there, and two 12 volts over here and two grounds over here. I was hoping that that would be enough power to roast the entire frame. Well, it wasn't. I put a frame on there, and I flicked the switches, and nothing happened. So in the interest of testing, I ran one wire across, and I flicked the switches, and it heated up instantly. And I ran two wires across, and I flicked the switches, and almost nothing happened. But when I left it there for, 30, 45 seconds, it started to warm up just slightly. Well, that wasn't good enough. And if it would barely power two wires, it was definitely never going to power four. So I had to look for something better as a power source. So I walked around the shop and walked around the house a bunch, trying to find something that could put out more than 12 volts, 2.5 amps DC. And I've got a couple of power adapters that can put out 5 amps each, which seemed a lot better, but still wasn't going to be enough to consistently power an entire frame every time. And that was what I really wanted. So I was thinking, and then I thought, why can't I use a computer power supply? They put out DC current, and they're rated at lots of watts, which means lots of volts. So I went out and I grabbed the Dell, my old computer, and I grabbed the power supply out of it, just yanked it out, and cracked it open. And then I did some Googling, and I found that these yellow wires in here are carrying 12 volts, and about two of them, stem from a 12-volt A rail, which puts out 12 volts at 18 amps, and half of them stem from a 12-volt B rail, which puts out 12 volts at 18 amps. So in total, we've got 24 volts and 36 amps, if that's how it actually stacks up. Otherwise, we've got 12 volts and 36 amps. Anyway, it's a lot more power. So I hooked those up all together to a piece of standard electrical wire, and then I hooked up a bunch of the common grounds in here to the other side of that wire. And then there's this one little weird wire, which connects the power supply to the motherboard, and then the motherboard can use it to tell the power supply that it's connected and should be on. So because we're not actually connected to a motherboard, we have to fake that, and the way to do that is just to wire nut it to a common ground. So grounds, power, same over here, connectors, raised contacts with a little lip to touch the wires, and that's about it, and the switches. So we've got a frame in here. It's the same frame we were using. Unfortunately, the wax we were using is no more. It's been melted too many times, so I'm going to use a piece of the pristine, beautiful wax from that package you had around. And I'm concluding that this stuff is like super wax or something like that, because it's not quite the right size for these frames. It's a bit smaller. But it covers 3 of the 4 wires, and that's enough for the purposes of this little video. All right. So I've got this guy sitting there. It's in okay contact with the wires, I guess. But I'm going to really push it down a little bit just to get better contact going on. Okay, so that's in good contact. You can kind of see the wires through there, but they are definitely not embedded yet. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to push this back a little bit. So I've got the switches right there. I'm going to use my left arm. This might take some maneuvering. I'm I'm gonna use my left arm to hold the frame down and really keep some pressure on there. Let me see how to best do this. All right, so left arm holding the frame down, both sides, fairly even pressure. And I've got it set up so that I can just reach these switches. So I'm gonna keep the camera on the wax, and my arm is just about at the center of the frame. So, pushing down, gonna flick them on, and then it should take a little bit less than 3 seconds. 3 seconds seems to melt all the way through. So I'm gonna go for just 2 seconds. So, 1, 2. Okay. Alrighty. Give it a second to cool down, and then pull it up. What have we got? What have we got? What have we got? Okay, so we have got a pretty darn good embed. All the way across on all the wires. Yeah, they heated up evenly, melted through pretty evenly. No problem at all. So on this particular unit, the wire melted through all the way right here, just on this wire, and right here, just this one little section on this other wire. And then it didn't melt through enough right here, just this one little section. But despite that, there are enough melted embedded sections all the way through that it is a solid, beautiful embed. So there's some more experimentation to be done in terms of getting the level of this up just a little bit so that the wax can't push through all the way, or figuring out some kind of compressing thing to press down on it. But as an initial test of the connectors and using a set thing with a switch to melt through a frame, or melt through some foundation and attach it to a frame, I'd say this was success. All right,